Good afternoon, and welcome to the Middle East Forum's webinar and podcast series, Israel Insider, this week with Alex Selsky. I'm Stacey Roman, and I will be moderating this discussion today. We're pleased to have Alex Selsky, a senior advisor to the Middle East Forum's Israel Victory Project, join us this week to update us on all the events going on in Israel. Mr. Selsky will be giving us a briefing on current Israeli affairs for 15 minutes, then open it up for questions. Should you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type your question. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to Mr. Alex Selsky.
Hello, dear friends. It's me again, week after week, replacing Ashley. Ashley just doesn't feel well, so we all pray for his health, and I'm replacing him. Well, we have a very interesting week and actually a very interesting day. From one hand, we still I may say in the same even stage in the coalitional negotiations, because they are not closed yet. We don't have a government formed, and we don't have yet coalitional agreements with all the parties, with all the major parties. But we do have progress, which is very interesting and can show us and teach us about the future. And we have interesting things happen. We have a very, very interesting interview that Benjamin Netanyahu gave to a former New York Times journalist, and gave very interesting insights into his security and international politics vision, which we will speak about. And also another issue that I would like to touch is something that is very sensitive, very central, and very important, I think, even for this talk, because it touches the relationship between Israel and American Jewry very much. And if it's about American Jewry, it's about America, which is the change of law of return. So let's go to the beginning and start from the first point. So as I said, the government is not formed yet, and the major challenge at the moment, exactly as it was last week, is the agreement with the religious Zionist party headed by Bezalel Smotrich. We have lots of information, lots of briefings, lots of blame trade from both sides, but we see that the negotiations have progress. Now, what we see is two very interesting things. First, we see that it's not so easy. And I said that a week ago, that it means that, we all thought that here it comes, government, the dream government of Netanyahu having 64 mandates, and now it's so clear that it's, as we say in Hebrew, fully right-wing government, so there will be full consensus and it will be formed so easily and will govern, with consensus and full understanding between the players for 3 or 4 or 5 years, maybe. By the way, some speak about a possibility that this government will be governing even close to 5 years, or even more. I will not get into it. It's some very specific thing, and not sure it will happen. But here we see that there are big tensions between the players, and there is much of misunderstanding. There is much of political tension, and something that is so clear, that the Zionist religious party got 14 altogether, together with Ben Gvir, who is additional party, but again is within the 14. So, apparently, and very, we can expect that Smotrich will get something very, very high, very significant position, and he wants to be the defense minister, and Netanyahu doesn't give him. Now, why Netanyahu doesn't give him? It's a very good question. Now, some may say that Netanyahu doesn't want to give him security ministry because of the potential tension with the United States. That how come he can give such a sensitive and significant ministry to right wing, some will say extreme right wing, a politician, but I would like to remind you that in the past he gave it to Bogi Ya'alon, who then was portrayed definitely as a very right wing, and then he gave it to Lieberman, who was definitely portrayed as the hawk. I think that even the perception of a hawk of Lieberman then was maybe even stronger than the perception of a hawk of Smotrich today. And then he gave it to Bennett, who definitely was, accepted as a hawk, and the government survived, and the country survived, and Netanyahu survived. Now he neutralized them also very well and put them into, his very cautious policy. But I'm saying that because I think that this is not necessarily the reason. Some say that maybe the reason that he doesn't give the security ministry to Smotrich and at the moment keeps it to himself can be two. One is definitely keeping it within Likud. So maybe he thinks about someone from Likud to give it to. It can definitely be Yoav Gallant, major general in reserve, very respected one, the one that should have been a chief of staff was not given to because of political tension. So definitely he is, I think, at least in the public opinion, I don't know if it's in Netanyahu's head, but in the public opinion, he is maybe the number one nominee. But there is another version, which I hope we will know soon the answer. But the other version is that it might be that Netanyahu doesn't want now to give the security ministry because he keeps it to a potential additional expansion of the coalition. Now, who can it be? It can be Gantz. Now, I would like to remind you that Gantz in the last elections ran together with Gideon Sa'ar. Now, we cannot assume that Gideon Sa'ar will join the government with Netanyahu. He said that, and I think we might believe, even though in Israeli politics, I don't think that we can trust promises. After what Bennett did, I think promises, is not something that we can count in. But in this case, I would put, I would put a lot of percentage, big chances that Gideon Sa'ar will not move. But if even he will not move, I think that if Gantz will come with his mandates only within his faction, without the mandates of Gideon Sa'ar, which are 4, taking his 6, it's a lot. But it's more than a lot. It gives to Netanyahu a possibility to keep all 3 major partners who he expects tensions with, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, keeping them on low, fire, saying, it's no problem. You want to leave, because Smotrich is 7, and Ben-Gvir is 6. So and Gantz will be 6. So if Gantz is in, so Netanyahu will have 71. So from 71, you can subtract 6 or 7 easily. So it gives him a possibility to much more easily govern and control the government in each one of those players who definitely can, cause tensions to him and leverage and pressure. He will say, okay, no problem, you can leave. I definitely think that it crossed his mind. I'm definitely sure it crossed his mind. I'm definitely sure that it's something that he would be very, he would really like to do. I'm not sure it will happen, though. I remind you again that he already once brought guns in and fooled him, just fooled him, and everybody spoke that Gantz will be fooled, and he was. Now, on one hand, you may say, Gantz already learned the lesson. He would not do that, never. But I would like to quote, a very, very beloved book of mine and of many, and definitely many Israelis, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and there is a very, very popular saying there that things that happen once, apparently will not happen second time, but things that happen twice very definitely will happen third time. I think that, after Gantz was kind of, I think, fooled by Netanyahu, and I think Gantz was, the last elections, also fooled by Gideon Sar, if you ask me, telling him stories that together they will form a government. I wouldn't count out a possibility that Gantz can be convinced. And also, by the way, Gantz, I think, is a very kind of, naive in a good way politician, meaning that he really, really thinks about the values, about the goals, and about the country. So if he understands that it's good for the stability and for the goals of the government, for dealing with Iran and Saudis and Palestinians and economy and everything, I definitely think he might do that. So that's about the government. Now, Shas is not fully closed yet, but we do see things in closure. Now, I would like to speak about the interview of Netanyahu and then go back to law of return, which is connected to some of the closures. I will go fast because we're already on 12 minutes. So Netanyahu gave a very interesting interview that relates to us, to Middle East Forum and to Israel Victory Project very much. And he said a very interesting things. When he was asked what will be his goals during this term, he said that the first goal will be to prevent Iran from, he said, from eliminating Israel. I doubt, and I wonder if he doesn't exaggerate, but let's believe that that's what he thinks. I don't think that there is a country on earth that can destroy Israel, but he has or more information or more motivation. But that's what he names his first goal: preventing Iran from ability, from having nuclear weapons. And second, to bring, he said, to expand the circle of peace and to make peace with Saudis. And he says that it will actually de facto eliminate the conflict between Israel and the Arabs and the Arab world, because it will mean that the full majority of the Arab world will have peace and normalization with Israel, definitely the biggest players. But he says that it will not eliminate the conflict with Palestinians, but Palestinians are about 1 or 2% of the Arab world. So we will close peace with them after, in better conditions that we, and I quote, will be able to live with. Now, I think and I hope that he means what we speak in Israel Victory Project for years already, that he will be able to enforce Israel's condition on Palestinians and actually defeat them, not negotiate, not giving them concessions, but defeat them and enforcing Israeli conditions on them after He understands that they don't have a backup. Now, what he says also is very interesting. He says that Palestinians are the uh, um, uh, uh, sorry, I forgot. I think the word, but I really want to. I really want to find and say that, because I think this is a very, very important quote. It says that Palestinians are the tail wagging the body of the Arab world. It's very interesting. It does mean that he gives big credit to Palestinians, big credit to Palestinians, and I think that it shows us in Israel Victory Project how we must concentrate ourselves on the Palestinians and not thinking that they're puppets, because we must concentrate on defeating them, and then the conflict fully will be over and security will be provided. And the last thing I would like to say, I hope I have another minute, a very important issue that we experience now. All the religious parties demand in the coalitional negotiations, they demand from Likud a change, a major change in the law of return. And I just want to remind, what is the law of return? The law of return is a law that provides eligibility rights for Jews and members of their families to make aliyah, as we call it in Israel, repatriate or immigrate to Israel. Now, who can do that? A Jew, meaning the one halachically being Jewish, meaning having Jewish mother, son or daughter for a Jew, meaning second generation, we call it, and a third generation. Okay, now what all of them demand, all the religious parties, is to cancel the paragraph of the third generation. Now, it will be a major change in the whole conception of who we give the eligibility right to come back to Israel, to make Aliyah to Israel. But today in the morning happened what I was telling for all these days that Likud will be against. Why Likud will be against? Because it will shut the door, I may say, shut the door with the liberal American jury. Because as we know, the liberal American communities, religious streams, and the biggest of them, the Reform one, they, by their law, by the internal halachic law, they accept those who have Jewish father as fully accepted Jews. By the way, I think the conservatives somehow close to it, but I'm not sure they have a halachic law as reforms for that. And doing that will shut the door of relations with this community, which already are very bad, because Israel goes to the right in terms of security, in terms of the conflict with the Palestinians, but it also goes very much to the right in terms of politics, religion and state. So if we do that, we will shut the door, and then also the relations between Israel and the United States, even now they are very partisan, but if we do that, it will be even more partisan, because all those Jews who support the Democratic Party will be even further, much further. So we will expand this gap with Democrats and liberal Jews much further. I don't see Netanyahu does that. And today in the morning, he said that Likud will not agree to the change in the law of return. This is a major conflict now in the negotiations. And I just checked, the news and spoke to people just before our talk. So far, there is no even reply or reaction from the religious parties to this statement of Likud. I don't know how it will be resolved, but I think that after all they will just accept it, but they will demand something in return. By the way, I don't know if in the beginning they would really they really wanted to get it, or it was something to negotiate. But this is a very interesting issue, and that's how it is resolved now, and we will see how it's going on later. I took time, right?
Mm. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we have quite a few good questions coming in. Carrie Hillebrand asks, in practical terms, how would the proposed change in the law of return impact on Aliyah, especially from Russia and the Ukraine?
That's a very, very good question. Twice. Once, because you see why the whole issue of the reform in law of return is raised now, because we have now a big wave of immigration, primarily from Russia and Ukraine, because of the war. It apparently this year the number will be the number of the olim, of the immigrants, will be twice from the last year. And what we also see that today, majority, about 70% of those immigrants today are not halachically Jews, meaning they're second and third generation, and their spouses, okay? Which definitely for all those who are very, who worries for the Jewish character of the state, is a big concern. Now, there are those who come and say, listen, second and third generation, even if they come with no knowledge about their identity, they develop their identity here. And I can give you a whole lecture about how this right in many, many cases. And I'll tell you even more. We have in the beginning of the state of Israel, we have many of those who came who were not halachically Jewish and became heroes of the Zionism, and we didn't count them as not halachically Jewish. But today, because the character of the state is more and more orthodox, so we count halachically. So, but this government is going to be, the most halachic, ultra, not even orthodox, but ultra orthodox government, as it seems. So they want to close it because of what they see. But I want to tell something that to our viewers and listeners, that the real problem of the third generation is not the problem of the post-Soviet Jewry. Because first of all, post-Soviet Jewry overall, we tend to think, those who hear about the problem of non-Jewish aliyah from the former Soviet Union, if you dig in, you'll see that the total majority, 70% of all the olim, all the immigrants from the former Soviet Union, are halachically Jewish. Okay, only 30%. Like in the beginning of the 90s, 93% of the olim, of the immigrants, were halachically Jewish, and it decreased until now, and it went until 30. But the real problem would be the reform. Now let's assume, God forbid, but don't tell me it's not possible, in 5, 10, 15, or 20 years, it will be a big wave of anti-Semitism in the United States. Now, those who say it will never happen know nothing about Jewish history, because Jews were beaten always in the places where they succeeded the most. Okay, it was in Germany, in France, in Spain. It's another whole lecture, but that's the fact. So it can happen. It will not happen because only one reason, because I will put my IDF form and come to take the Jews, okay, if they will not come fast by themselves. So then, if big wave of Aliyah, of Reform Jews, will take place, they will come in much bigger numbers of not halachic Jews, but they will not come as former Soviet Jews saying, yes, you're right, we're not good enough, we will do whatever you say, because they were not knowledgeable. Reformed Jews of the United States will come and say, no, you don't teach us, we'll teach you. We have institutions, we have money, we have all the structure. You will not tell us how to be Jewish. We will build our institutions within Israel. So it has huge effect on American Jewry, and definitely, if it happens, it can have huge effect on the Aliyah from the former Soviet Union. By the way, not only, again, assimilation is in every community around the world, except maybe the only community that has the lowest assimilation rates is France. But it's whole other lecture.
Sounds like a fascinating lecture. Doris Ross-Strauss asks, could you talk about Iran's hand in the latest Jerusalem bombings and other latest terrorist actions, and the need for Netanyahu to show he will take care of this without Greer, Smotrich, or ilk?
Without what?
The religious Zionist parties.
Iran, well, how Iran is involved in the latest terror attacks? Well, we definitely know that Iran is funding all the, all the big terror groups, in one way or another, and supports them. So if we don't need Iranian regime to be involved in every terror attack. We just know that the motivation and the inspiration and the backing for the whole anti-Israeli terror comes from Iran. Now, it doesn't mean, again, it does mean that Palestinians are not motivated by themselves, but much of the money and much of the as I said, backing comes from Iran. So definitely, we understand that it's all connected. But the fact that this government is very religious doesn't subtract at any extent the will to stop Iran from nuclear weapon. I don't see connection. Maybe you think no connection.
All right, thank you. Jeffrey Sheff asks, do you think that an Israeli victory will include Hamas accepting defeat?
If we will be strong enough, they will be forced to. It depends on us. As you know, as Daniel Pipes, I always quote him as saying, Japanese were defeated and Germans were defeated. So Palestinians are what? Supermen, having no economy, no army, no real state. So how come we think we cannot defeat them? They're like small militant group. That's it. But what we need is the belief in it within the Israeli society. The problem, after all, is the spirit of Jews, not the spirit of Hamas. I'm sure we can defeat them. It depends on us.
Yeah, absolutely. Larry Greenberg asks, Netanyahu has declared that Israel will not be governed by the Talmud. By addressing Likud seculars and those who did not vote for him, has he alienated the religious coalition partners?
No, I think he just balances it. But also remember that Likud definitely originally is, right-wing liberal movement. Liberal meaning not religious. Now, majority of Likud voters are very traditional, we say. Traditional in Israel is something parallel to conservative movement in America. The official name of conservative movement in Israel is Atnoa Masoratit, okay, the traditional movement. So majority of now who are traditionals in Israel, people who don't count themselves as are not identified as religious, but they they feel Jewish and they keep Jewish, but they're not halachic style of living people, and many of Likud voters are like this. And Netanyahu also understands that you cannot, after all, politics, it's always about to what extent you go to the extreme. And if you go too much to one extreme, it will always balance itself. You can see that in American politics very, very well. So he understands that, he's the potential of his government to go to religious extremists is very high. So he understands that he must balance, because if he doesn't balance, it may fall, because after all, somebody will just, from Likud will just leave, understanding that there is too much pressure from the people, and as in Israel, every day when you feel political tension, the channels, the media channels are polling every day, so you can see what's happening, like what the people feel. And that's what happened, by the way, to the previous government. It fell because it felt the people. So if this polling will show to few Likudniks, okay, that this government went to some extreme too much, they may resign, and the government will collapse. He understands that, and he understands that he must balance, and he balances. It's not black and white. Nothing in life is black and white. Definitely Judaism is not black and white. The scale is so high, and he balances it, and he does it right, definitely for himself, and I'm sure for the Israeli society as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that explanation. We've come to close our webinar and podcast. Alex, thank you so much for taking time to update us this week.
Thank you.
And
thank you, Stacy. Thank you for all our viewers.
Absolutely, and for stepping in so quickly. For our viewers and listeners, please join us Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern with Anaf Kalam discussing why do Islamists fake hate crimes. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day.